So today we are going to take some time and go through some specific things. One, we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. We always do. And then we're going to talk about what has happened this past year. So we'll talk about a year in review. We'll talk about the working groups and the initiatives that we're working on. And at any time, you can ask any questions as we're moving through this. We'll talk about the HIP Lobby Day and the legislative breakfast and some of the outcomes that we came across. We're going to talk about reconvening the emergency food meetings, and we'll have some open discussion towards the end. So I'm going to invite you to take a moment in silence and read our land acknowledgement. Okay. It's a good place to ground ourselves in, and so
I think
we
it's really
appreciate that.
important to mention today that I don't know if people have heard the news, and I don't want to become political, but I will say that if anybody is, paid attention to the fact that some of the indigenous people's work that was done during World War I and World War II, the code talkers, some of you may remember the really impactful work that they did during World War II specifically. All erased from the internet, as was some other veterans that are Black veterans and women that made big roles in the military, all erased from the internet in the last few days. So erasing history is happening. And I just think that, again, we try to not become political, but I can't be silent about that. I'm just like, I read that this morning and was devastated. And I think it's just want to make people aware in case it slipped by, because stuff's coming at us so fast and furious that I think it's important that we pause, and so if we're gonna take the moment to pause and read a land acknowledgement, I think it's equally important to recognize what's happening right now today. So wherever you sit, I hope that you're paying attention and feeling like you can speak up about that wherever you are. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to the share. So we are really glad you're here. All right. Let me take a moment and so we did a lot this past year, and we did it all with your help, and we couldn't have done it without you. And so some of these are some of the things that we worked on together. So this past year, we coordinated our first legislative breakfast with the Greater New Bedford Youth Alliance, with the Women's Alliance of Southeastern Massachusetts. And that was a big deal, getting those legislators together and our partners in the Greater New Bedford area together to talk about some things that are important to us and create relationships with legislators. And those are the main pieces we were trying to establish. The other pieces that there was Poverty Commission was moving around the state in Massachusetts, and they were having opening hearings. And so the last one we went to was at UMass Dartmouth, and we provided food security testimony, and our food equity advisors provided testimony at the Poverty Commission. The Poverty Commission's sole purpose is to really take all the information from all the commission hearings and feed it back to the legislators because you were coming up with proposals for how to overcome poverty. That was the point of the Poverty Commission. So we hope to see the report in this coming year, but we did work on that with them, on the different groups that were working on this. One of the other things we did was we created and implemented a legislative advocacy training with our community advisory board and community partners. And that was fantastic. We were able to kind of provide some training on this to engage more people into the legislative advocacy. If you or your organization are interested in the legislative advocacy training, please contact us at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. We would be happy to work with your organization or with you to do a training on how to do more legislative advocacy. We hosted a virtual candidate forum for District 10 with 80 registrants. That's really important too, is really providing an opportunity for the public to engage with potential legislators as they come through about the food system. So all the questions that were asked during the candidate forum were about the food system, and that was really important to find out where the candidates stand on these positions. And that's something we do whenever we, at the state level, every 2 years. We also engaged over 1,000 members in our advocacy this past year, and our advocacy was new with the technology we're using, and it resulted in 465 letters sent to legislators in the new technology we're using. So we think that's a really good foundational piece to start to grow doing our advocacy. We organized 2 State House lobby days for the Healthy Incentives Program. One was in March of last year and the other was December. For those of you who are unaware, the Healthy Incentives Program was a dollar-to-dollar match for SNAP recipients. They had cut it December 1 to $20 monthly, regardless of household size. So we were actually at the State House in November, really trying to lobby the legislators not to make those cuts. And so those are the 2 pieces that we did. We also launched our second annual Eat
Wait,
Local.
I'm gonna just make a pause. Does anybody not know about HIP? We're gonna talk about it a little bit more in a little bit later, because we just had another HIP lobby day a week ago. But just want to reinforce that it had been that people that were eligible for HIP would get matched onto their SNAP card 40, 60, or $80, depending on their household size. And in December, it went down to 20, regardless of your household size. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, but I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you, Liz. That's great. Okay. All right. The other piece we did was we launched our second annual Eat Local Southcoast Challenge with over 400 residents. And this is it's a fun, engaging way for people to get involved in eating local. So for 4 weeks during the summer, people last year got a weekly email with information on how do you eat local, like where are the places you can go, where are the farmers markets, here are some recipes, here's some food system education to go along with it as well. And so we're going to do it again this year, but we'll talk about more of that later. We also held our 5th annual our virtual summit, Shifting Perspectives from Food Security to Food Sovereignty. And that's been online for the last 5 years, and it was very well attended and really kind of start trying to figure out what's the cutting edge thing we should be thinking about. And that's what we do in the food summits. And last year we initiated our Community and Agriculture Resilience Audit Tool, or what we call the CARROT, in Bristol County. And that is basically identifying where we are resilient and where are the gaps. And we've been trying to do asset mapping and realizing we need this. And this is going to be a piece of identifying the assets and the gaps in our region. So we'll talk about more of that later, but that we started that initially with the Community Advisory Board for Bristol County. And so we're continuing on that momentum. And last year we officially launched our Frogfoot Farm and harvested our first crops that went to food pantries. So we're really excited about those pieces. So now that you saw kind of what we did last year, and this is what we've been doing this year and what we're going to continue to do. We'll continue to advocate for our regional food system bills, which we'll go over in a moment. We just partnered on a legislative breakfast and that with Aging Well for the different senior community centers all across the 6 counties in our area. And I'll talk about the successes of that as well. We'll continue to educate and our annual initiatives for the Eat Local Southcoast Challenge, our food summit, and a Farm Coast documentary. This is a new piece we started last year, and now we are working on creating a documentary to tell the story of the South Coast and what farming and other pieces are like in our area, and what does the food system really look like across this region. So we're starting to work on that as well. We're expanding our community and agricultural resiliency audit tool into other counties across our area, into all the 6 counties, so Norfolk, Bristol, Plymouth, Barnstable, Duke, and Nantucket. So we're going to be working on that. And we address the food access issues as they emerge. So that's kind of the macro approach that we're taking to the different pieces that we're doing. Okay. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, in 2021, we published the food system assessment. We created our community advisory board. The community advisory board took the data from the food system assessment. We identified 25 priorities. We peppered them into 4 working groups, and each working group now has an area of policy focus and an area of initiative focus. So we have 4 working groups: education, communication, food access, policy, and capacity building. So within this is our education and communication working group. And our policy focus within this working group is 2 bills. One is an act establishing the Farm to School program, which is a grant program for school districts to actually get the grant and then build out different pieces if they want to create a commercial kitchen for scratch cook cooking, if they want to buy more local food, if they want to create little curriculum and teach kids for raised garden beds and so on. And it's very hands-on experiential approach for students and schools to have that understanding around agriculture, the environment, and food system education. So that's one bill. And the other bill is the food literacy bill, which is really a much larger picture, where we would get the Department of Secondary and Elementary Schools, or DESE, to actually create standards around food system education for K to 12. So this would be a huge impact for students to have better health outcomes and really understand the food system and all the choices that we make in daily life. It will also give people a chance to mentor into the food sector as a work, as a job. So it'll teach people about agriculture, fishing, processing, distribution, restaurant, entrepreneurship. Everything will be entwined. And so that's the food literacy bill. Our initiatives are the ones we're going to keep doing. The Eat Local Southcoast Challenge, so we're going to have that again. And our food summit, which we're going to have again. And I just briefly mentioned the Farm Coast documentary. So we'll continue to work on these pieces for the education and communication working group. So the next working group we have is the food access working group. And again, there are policy initiatives, there are policy focuses, and there are initiatives. The first bill we're working on is the Healthy Incentives Program, which Liz just described. We're going to continue to focus on this particular bill. The bill is, a lot of bills have appropriations, so we'll be doing the budget side of each bill and then also getting the bill passed. So those are 2 pieces we'll work on. And an act establishing the basic needs assistance for Massachusetts immigrant residents is essentially state-funded SNAP for Massachusetts immigrant residents. So those are the 2 policy pieces we'll work on in the food access working group. And within the initiatives, we want to update our food pantry information. We recognize that we're potentially coming into a food crisis, for lack of a better word, right now. We're coming into that with all the unknowns at the federal level and all the unknowns at the state funding level and what's going to happen. So we want to basically update all the food pantry lists so we can then start meeting. We need all the food pantry information to start meeting, and we want to conduct focus groups again to identify particular pieces of maybe gap areas, to check in with the community to see, are we on the right path? What are we missing? And so we kind of use focus groups in that way. And we will talk more about the focus groups in the next section, but we want to get your thoughts on the emergency food meeting. So we'll move that in a second. The policy working group is again focused on policies and initiatives. The policy side is an act promoting equity in agriculture, which would essentially create a commission comprised of other Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and it's actually listed the different groups in the bill, who will be on this commission, who will do the research. And the research is, what are the barriers to entering in agriculture? Isn't really clear. And the idea of the commission is to identify the barriers and propose policies to legislators. So we want to pass this commission. We want to get it up and running so we can start this research, and then we can get really good information from the people that are most directly impacted. And the other piece of the policy work is the Massachusetts food system budget, where there's very specific programs are kind of foundational to Massachusetts food budget. The Healthy Incentive Program is one, the buy locals, there's an enormous list that we're working on. So those are the pieces of policy that we're going to work on. And the initiative is to collect stories on each bill. And that's really important for testimony and to educate the public. So we're going to also be speaking about that in a moment, to why that's important and how we're going to collect stories. But I just wanted to give you an overview of the working groups. And the last working group is the capacity building working group. That particular group is working on 2 bills as well. One is an act encouraging the donation of food to persons in need, an exciting bill. This bill will actually incentivize farmers and restaurants up to $25,000. If they donate food to food pantries, they can recoup that money up to $25,000. And that's really important as we come into this season, that we have more fresh fruits and vegetables available to the food pantries in our area. So this will really help incentivize that, that bill, and it will reduce food waste on the backside of the food system. So we want to make sure all the food that's in farms is coming into the food pantries, all the food that's in restaurants is coming into food pantries. The other one is promoting economic opportunity for cottage food entrepreneurs. This one is really identifying that there's no state one kind of regulation or policy wrapped around food, the cottage food industry. Cottage food is when you would have, say, I grow strawberries and I want to make strawberry jam, but I want to sell that. There's a lot of regulations right now, and it's in the hands of different departments of health, and each town is very different on how that's interpreted. So this bill would actually create an overarching single bill that will answer some of those questions around what needs to be in a commercial kitchen, and needs a health inspection, what doesn't, what can be just sold on the street, what does the food labeling need to look like, and so on. The initiative is really, we want to engage more of our members at large, like all of you, at the municipal level, whether it's the Department of Health or commissions on food waste or agricultural commissions. We want to get food into more spaces and cross more silos and get the food sector really woven into these different pieces. And that's kind of where we're going with those working groups. I'm going to stop sharing, actually. There was a lot of information that I shared there, and I want to open up the space for questions. I'll keep going because we have an open discussion at the end, but if you have very specific questions around the bills or the initiatives. Is there something that struck you? The accomplishments, did anything really stand out for you? Okay, we'll come back to these. So the next section we're going to share is more about the different outcomes of what just recently happened. Okay, so recently we had, on March 13, just last week, we had the HIP Lobby Day. And that's where we had 11 of our Southcoast Food Policy Council Community Advisory Board members come to the State House with us, and they met with 16 different legislators to support the Healthy Incentive Program. And we had 3 very specific asks. One was to put $5 million in the supplemental budget for this year, so we can go from the $20 back to its original form of 40, 60, or 80, depending on family size. And then we want we asked for 25 million for the coming year's budget for 2026. So it's fully funded all year round, and it will be at that normal $40 to $80 monthly, depending on the family size. And our third ask was to co-sponsor the Healthy Incentives Program to make it a permanent program of Massachusetts. And those are really key pieces of asks. Of the different legislators we met, and in the follow-up with the different community advisory boards, so far one legislator said on the front end, I will co-sponsor it. Oftentimes they're not going to co-sponsor it immediately. They want to see where things fall with how things are coming out with the funds, federal funds coming to the state, and how the state, what's happening at that level. So there's a lot of kind of caution and just kind of watching what's happening before they're making decisions. So this is not an unusual response for us.
Mm.
And then, yeah.
Can I
Yeah, hi.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Um, so this is my first time being here, so I'm trying to be a
Welcome.
good listener. I'm trying to be a good listener, but I am curious about this State House event. So are you asking for money for the entire state or just for our little corner of it?
That's a great question. So this is for the state. The HIP program is a state program. So people who are SNAP recipients, which is federal money, there's an equivalent program at the state level. It's called HIP, the Healthy Incentives Program. And so for instance, say you have $79 on SNAP. And this currently, the way it's set up is you would get 20 extra dollars, but you can only use it to buy fresh fruits and vegetables from local farmers, Massachusetts farmers, and they have to be a HIP vendor. And that not every farmer is a HIP vendor. Not every CSA is a HIP CSA. So it's very specifically targeting healthy food for people who find it expensive to buy healthy food in other places, or they don't have enough money on their SNAP to do that. So it's basically an additional money, but it's specifically focusing on healthy food for fresh fruits and vegetables for the state.
And only one legislator seemed to be interested, or were all 16 eager to hear what you have to say? And did
Oh,
they?
that's a great question. I'm so glad you're asking that. No, they're all very yeah, they're very excited and very supportive, but they're not going to commit on the front end necessarily. Some people will because this is their thing, their passion. They can defend it. If they needed to defend it, they could. And their constituents have all been asking for this for a long time, and they want it to work for themselves and their constituents. So some have already co-sponsored this bill. When you go on the Massachusetts legislature website and you find the HIP bill, you can see who's currently co-sponsored within there. What we're trying to do is asking for co-sponsorship in a process format. I'm sorry if I'm going into weeds, tell me if it's too much.
No.
If you get a lot of co-sponsorship before the bill goes to a committee, the committee chair is like going to take this very seriously. There's a lot of support, which means also that there's a lot of support if it goes to a floor vote. So it's really important on the front end going into a committee meeting that the bill already has a lot of co-sponsorship, both in the Senate and the House side. I hope that helps.
Thanks, very much so.
Okay. So yeah, the legislators we met with they were the members' legislators. So the members, each of the community advisory board members had to make a meeting with their own legislators. So some of those meetings were their own legislators, and some of them were strategic decisions to make these meetings based on which committee they're in. Sandria, did that help?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, good. All right, so on March 14, which is the next day, we worked with our friends in the different elder groups like Bristol Aging, Coastline Elderly, the Cape and the Islands, and different groups across the 6 counties to pull together a legislative breakfast aimed at really supporting the elder programs and elder organizations. And the Healthy Incentive Program definitely is a group that people who are on SNAP who are seniors. This is a very vulnerable population, so we really worked with them. So nearly 200 people attended with Congressman Keating, along with 20 other legislators and staff. And our Marion Institute, Liz Wiley, spoke briefly about the Southcoast Food Policy Council. We had 2 food equity advisors of the Southcoast Food Policy Council, who are people with lived experience of hunger, provide testimony to support the HIP of the 3 ideas that were listed above. So they gave testimony to the legislators. They shared their HIP story, essentially, of why it's really important to support the HIP program. And many of our community advisory board members were there as well. So this is just another touch point with us, with legislators, with engaging the community and working with communities that are working in and out of the food system. So we recognize the senior population is a very vulnerable population. We wanted to work with groups and help elevate the food insecurity with elderly, the aging population. So we worked with them. So now we're in a different phase where we're now going to be having emergency food meetings. For those of you who are unaware, during the pandemic, the Southcoast Food Policy Council was hosting weekly meetings for about 2 years. And these were important meetings to facilitate this region, getting the food together, to identify where the gaps are and where there is programs. How can we put programs together to help people and bring the money down from Boston and different foundations and so on? It's kind of that time again. We're hearing a lot from our food pantries of let's re-engage this meeting, and we don't know if it's going to be monthly or weekly. But what my ask is for all of you is if you or your organization or a group you work with are interested in joining these emergency food meetings, please email sfpc@marioninstitute.org and we will add you to the South Coast Food Alert. And it's through this Google listserv that we'll be sending the meeting information out. So we ask you to share
Wait a
this.
minute, let's just get clear. Wait a minute.
Sure.
All of you heard about this today because you probably are already members at large, right? And you get our SFPC member at large email. Information will go out on that if and when we start those up. We're still in sort of the collecting phase of like, do people feel the need for these emergency food meetings to start up again? We are polling people. We talked to our CAB when we had our CAB meeting. We're talking to our working groups. We wanted to elevate it to all of you. We don't need to have another meeting to have another meeting. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out like, let's lay the groundwork, let's get pieces in place so that if and when we feel like those emergency food meetings need to start up again, so people can be networking, connecting, convening, knowing what's going on with each other, collaborating a little bit more easier. We want to have the system set up and ready to kind of act on it. That's why earlier in the presentation, Christine mentioned that we're trying to sort of dust off the food pantry lists and food relief organization lists that we had going during the pandemic when we were meeting with everybody more regularly for those emergency meetings. We want that to be up and ready to go if we need to like pull the cord and start having those meetings. In the meantime, the food alert is a great way to get updates. So if you're an SFPC member at large and you get emails just about what, like you got this email about participating in this quarterly meeting or what's going on just generally, that's one thing. But if you are a food relief organization or really in the food sector where, you need timely information, like Food Alert is for those of us that are like, hey, we just got a call that there's 60 pallets of chicken at Stop and Shop in Wareham. Can anybody take it? We're going to put that information on Food Alert so that another organization, the Hunger Commission or PACE or whoever, Damien's, can say, hey, I've got a truck. I can go pick it up. Who wants some? Come and get it from us. It's that type of quick coordination. And we started Food Alert because when we stopped having the emergency food meetings, it was like we needed some sort of ability for everybody to stay communicated in that quick way if those things happened. So Food Alert is really helpful for that. So I just wanted to make sure So you are all members, if you all got the email that you got today, you're all members of SFPC as considered members at large. But if you don't get the food alert and you want to get food alert emails as well to see like what's happening with that coordination piece, go ahead and email Christine at sfpc@marioninstitute.org, and then she has to actively put you onto that listserv. It's a little bit different from the email, okay?
That's great, Liz. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So we have shared a lot of information, and you must have a lot of questions, but I'm going to come back to, is there something that the SFPC either did last year or we're planning to do that strikes you? You want to get involved or you have questions? Oh, wonderful.
Hey,
Welcome,
welcome, Rep.
Representative Sylvia.
That's great. We just did a big overview of 2024 and what's on the docket for 2025, which I kind of think we filled you in on. So you're up to speed basically. But if you want to say anything, feel free.
Yeah, thanks. Apologies. I just wrapped up my first office hours in Mattapoisett at the library. So sorry, but had some constituent conversations to continue, but I'm happy to be on and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you too, Rep. Sylvia.
I'm super curious because I really don't know who these people are on this Zoom. And I'm curious about who and what they represent, because you're giving us all this amazing information about what SFPC is doing. And I'm super impressed. And my devotion is to Frogfoot Farm, but my eyes have been opened to so much more that you're doing, which is really very wonderful. But I'm kind of curious to hear how the folks on this Zoom are related to what you do. If anybody would be willing to turn their...
Yeah, I'll take an initial stab at that. And then surely anybody on here can also participate, speak, please. But first, let me just say this. So for those of you that are newer, the structure of the Southcoast Food Policy Council is set up that we have our Community Advisory Board, right? Those are people that have been selected to participate on our CAB. We call it CAB for short, but it's a Community Advisory Board. And it's made up of food system sectors, right? So farmers, to every sector of the food system. So farmers, producers, processors, distributors, food relief organizations, food recovery organizations are all, and consumers, right, are all are members of our CAB, our 30-member Community Advisory Board. When Christine walked through the 4 working groups, every CAB member has to sit on one of our working groups. Right. And we meet monthly with those 4 working groups. And that's what pushes the work forward of the Food Policy Council, is those 4 working groups working on those priority initiatives, those policy initiatives that she detailed, and those programmatic initiatives in each working group. Members at large who are all joining, some are CAB members that are on here today, and some are people that have been past CAB members, or they are just peripheral to the food system, whether they're an interested person and consumer, or they are representing, there's a bunch of food relief organizations on here, there's community organizations, social service organizations, government, obviously, healthcare. These are all people that are specifically following the work of the SFPC, right? Not necessarily the work of the Marion Institute, but the work of our program, the Food Policy Council, so that when we send out these updates and action alerts, specifically to take action on certain initiatives and legislation, they're the ones that all those 400 and something letters that we talked about having been sent last year are coming from. So that just kind of gives you sort of the framework of this a little bit more. But certainly anybody on here that's participating, I think it's important to note, like we have Noli's on here from Island Grown Initiative. I'm looking at her, and different members are on here that represent different counties, because the work that we're starting to do is starting to expand to these all the counties in southeastern Mass with the work of the carrot that Christine mentioned, the CARAT carrot, not the carrot that we eat, but the Community Agriculture Resiliency Auditing Tool, and starting to do that auditing tool with all of the counties around here. And all of that data will be going into our next food system assessment report next year. So we're definitely expanding out, but anybody else on here, please let me, I'm so happy to see you, buddy. I haven't seen your face in a while. Anybody else on here that has, that wants to talk about why they're on here? I think I would love to hear it. So feel free to unmute yourself. Laura?
I'll go. So my name is Laura Farley. I am the program director at the Kennedy Donovan Center Early Intervention Program, and I didn't know much. And that's exactly why I'm here, to educate myself and to learn more and to find out, different resources that we may be missing for our families, and to find out how we can support and help as well. So I'm here for 100% education and to learn and to see what we can do better on our end, and also, to support our families that are in some of these struggling situations. So it's exactly why I'm here.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah.
Noli?
Hi, everyone. My name is Noli Taylor, and I'm one of our co-executive directors at Island Grown Initiative on Martha's Vineyard. And I'm such a fan of this Food Policy Council, and we get so much important information from just being on the email list about when it's important to take action and speak up on different policy issues in the state. And I just had a question about the working groups. There's a couple of our staff members who I think would really like being part of these working groups or being alerted to what the working groups are doing. Is there a way to join specific working groups?
Yeah, so the way that we usually do the working groups is that typically in the fall is when Christine meets with all of our CAB members and does like a quick one-on-one check-in with them to see who's going to roll off the following, beginning of the calendar year. And then that gives us a sense of how many people we need to recruit back on. So we're always trying to keep our CAB at about 30 members. And we're always trying to do do we have different representation from the different food system sectors? Do we have good geographic representation? Do we have good diversity? Do we have just trying to make sure people are represented? Do we have good food equity advisors participating in our work? So typically in the fall is when we get a sense of who's rolling on and how many vacant seats we have. And then we bring on new people. And like I said, every CAB member then sits on a working group. I'd be hesitant, Noli, to say hey, join a working group right now, just because it's hard to, why we set up that system was because when we had it more on a rolling basis, Christine and I were always spending time up, kind of bringing people up to speed, right? Whereas this gives the momentum that that working group knows who's in that working group. They kind of meet each other at the beginning of the year. There's people that have already been on it. There are new people, and we don't lose that momentum. And I think that's really important. The other thing, Noli, is that as we create a community advisory board with you out on the vineyard, and you start to work more with your community advisory board, my thinking is down the road, you might start adopting some of that kind of structure where your community, after we publish the next food system assessment, that's for us how we identified our working groups, was that food system assessment really, when we did the community strategic planning with everybody, we were able to say there's 27 priorities, but they're really defined by these categories. And then that's how we named our working groups. It was these are clearly education things. These are clearly policy things. These are clearly food relief or food access issues and priorities. So we can certainly talk about it. I'm not saying no. We've had Martha's Vineyard, representation on our CAB in the past and on our working groups. Happy to do that. So we'll continue that conversation. But I just wanted you to understand the makeup and the structure and why.
We do have a list of people that we keep that we want to recruit. So if you have if your staff or anybody here wants to join, please send me your information and I will add you to the list for people that we will recruit starting in the fall.
Yeah, it's always nice to know oh, who's interested in joining, so that as we know, we're going to have 5 or 10 vacancies, we've already got kind of a list to go and pull from. Other thoughts, questions? Buddy, you raised your hand.
I just wanted to tell Sandra that I'm from New Bedford. My sister Sandra also works with the School Policy Council. And we're concerned about, of course, New Bedford, the neighborhoods and all that. But we're also concerned with a lot of the work that the council does on equity and things of that nature that are very important to everyone. And that's what's so important about this group is that it's for everyone. And so stay involved. We need all the help we can get and a lot of education, a lot of information, a lot of friends. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Stacy, let's see. Hi, all. Local vegetable farmer concerned about federal funding freezes loss of LFPA funding, figuring out how to get involved in problem solving hyper locally. Wonderful. You come to the right place.
Stacy, I'm a fan of Heartbeats. I was a CSA member for a long time. And we'd love to get you more involved for sure. You know, and I'm sure that you're working with Coastal Food Shed also.
Yeah, we are working with Coastal Food Shed. They've been a wonderful partner for us. And I know a lot of our farmer friends, you know, I feel like every day we're getting some new information or some new, you know, like we all are just responding. So
And I know that Karen Schwably, who used to be she's now the executive director at the Farm Bureau, she reached out to me last week. They were having a legislative breakfast. She is looking for farmer stories of who's being, you know, who's losing LFPA funding and how it's affecting them. And I'm happy to put you in touch with her because, you know, they've got a full-time lobbyist on their docket, which we don't have. We have to be careful about how much lobbying we do versus advocacy as a
yeah,
nonprofit.
thank you.
Certainly, we can put you in touch there because we want your voice. Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've shared through CMAP and through Coastal Food Shed. There's a lot of different folks collecting information, which is great. And yeah, just interested. It's rare that we can get on. Farmers can pop on to like those midday meetings. So I was like, oh my gosh, gotta come and hop on while there's a chance, because you know often we're just trying to farm and not have to think too much about policy, but it's becoming more and more apparent. It's something we have to be communicating with and advocating for all the time.
All of us on everything, really. And the other thing I will say is that, you know, from Christine has really been pushing us to do more story collecting, right? Because that's what she's hearing from legislators. Like they need the stories to be able to go and fight the cases at their level. So we have created a Google form that we'll be pushing out soon. That's like, you know, for a story bank. So we're setting up the system for a story bank for people to come on and tell their stories, whatever it is, whether you're a farmer, whether you're food insecure, whether you're just a concerned citizen. Like it will give everybody an opportunity to collect stories of how these food, you know, shortages and things are impacting them. And you know, so we are starting a story bank that I think will be useful for those testimonials and for us to use with our legislators for sure.
Great, thanks so much.
Stacy, if you could share your email in the chat, then Liz can hook you and Karen Schwalbe up. All right, so I did want to share with you how easy it is to do advocacy, how easy it is to share these stories. So I am going to come back here and share the website so you can see how easy this is. So this is the landing page for the Southcoast Food Policy Council. And you will see on the right side, the top, you can actually go through and look of, we're going to click on policy priorities. Right now, our key focus for all the bills that I walk through is actually just co-sponsorship. Next month, we're going to start the budget. It'll change to budget advocacy. So I am sharing with you, I just clicked that button, piece of cake for that bill. And this is just, it explains in detail and gives you statistics and different pieces about the bill and what you can do to help. And just click on the bottom, it says take action, and it goes right to the technology. You could use this on your phone, you could use this on your laptop. And this is the simple piece. All you need to do, whether you're on your phone or your laptop, is complete this. So I'm gonna fill in my information. Maybe it'll pop up. Oh, no, it won't. No. And I'm gonna show you how easy it is to actually, I'm gonna use it on a personal level. So once you go to the page where it says start writing, we give people several options. People have told us they sometimes prefer to make calls. So we have given you a script on what to say really quickly if you want to make a call. And if you scroll down, you can see there that it says who my representative is and who my senator is at the state level. So that's because I put in my address, my personal address in there. And so these are my legislators. And so within this, I wrote all these different pieces. This is already pre-written, and you can enter anything into this. So let's just say you have something to say about food literacy. You can actually add in a section. I just put in here. You can start typing. I have a story to tell you. Blah, blah, blah. So you can just tell your story on any of these pieces, and then you're going to hit send. And then it goes right off to your legislator. And that whatever you just wrote, that's what they are going to get. And this is really important. I'm going to stop the share for a moment.
And if you don't want to write anything, it's all pre-written. If you just read through it and you're like, yeah, I'm good with that, you can just scroll right to the bottom and say send.
Absolutely.
That clear to everybody? Was like, okay, yeah.
So it's a really easy piece of technology. Again, you can use it on your phone or on a laptop. And it's really important for your legislators to hear from you. I'm sure Rep. Sylvia would agree. It is one thing if we, as the South Coast Food Policy Council, send a letter, it doesn't actually have the weight as if a constituent is sending a letter to. And look, Rep. Sylvia just gave us the thumbs up. He agrees, and he's basically saying yes. So we need everybody to contact their own legislators. And there is, okay, so I see a hand raised in the iPhone, so go ahead, unmute yourself.
It was a mistake.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so at this time, it's just really important for legislators to hear from you, and these are co-sponsoring. And why we're asking this is there are 6,000 bills that are filed every 2 years. And so when we give you here's co-sponsor these 7 bills, it's putting a flashlight on 7 bills out of 6,000 and saying, hey, senator or representative, these are really important to me. Out of all these other bills, these are really important to me. And I want you to look at these and read through these. And can you become a champion? By saying, asking for co-sponsorship, you're asking them to be a champion of that bill. So that is why that's really important. And the more we're doing the meetings with different legislators, regardless of committee they're in, they want to hear from their constituents. So these are really important to ask. When we ask you to take an action, please do so. So I am going to share the link. Sorry, I'm going to share the link for that particular advocacy. Oops. Okay, that didn't work out. Let me go back to this. I'm going to share this back to you on the take action. And right now, like I said, all of our bills are about co-sponsoring. So I'm going to put this into the chat. This is the link. You just click on that link, put your personal information in there. If you put your work information in there, it's going to come up with a different set of legislators. And just be aware if they're where you are, because if you're allowed to do lobby work from work, that's great. And you're counting your hours, great. But there are some real conflict of interest and the difference between lobbying and advocacy. So again, if you want to be trained on these differences and more about advocacy and lobbying, please let us know. We're happy to do trainings. But but we asked that particular ask right now. And next month we'll have a different advocacy alert around budget issues. The other piece I wanted to share was going back to the website to share the stories. And the reason, where'd it go? The reason why this is really important, going back to our website, you can go anywhere, but on our landing page, at the very bottom is share your story on how equitable access to healthy local food has impacted you or your family. So you click here, and it basically goes to a Google form, asking some very basic information, your email, zip code, your name. The story, we're trying to get stories around a lot of different pieces. Some of it's legislative led, some of it's general food insecurity. There's a lot of good reasons why we're asking for this. Sometimes you want to, if you know somebody who wants to record into their phone their story, you can add the file here, or pictures, whatever you want. These are important for a variety of reasons. One, we need the testimony to put into letters when we send it out. The legislators want to hear how the direct impacts on their constituents. And two, at the federal level, as somebody posted in there, at the federal level, they need stories too. And so the more we can actually give our Congressman Keating and Warren and whoever else your Congress folks are, the more stories we can give them, the more they can take those stories to the floor and say, this is how it directly impacting our people. And so it's a twofold thing where the federal level needs help right now. They're having lots of town meetings, Congress folks. And at the state level, we also need those stories to move the legislation forward. So we will have the stats and the stories together, and it is the best type of testimony to provide, whether it's written or oral testimony. Does that all make sense? Why we're collecting stories?
Do they let you know, do our state legislators and even our senators and Keating, our rep, do they let you know when they're having town meetings?
Yes, and you have to be, I would suggest signing up for their newsletters. Anything, go to their websites. Every congressperson has their own website. Go sign up for the newsletter. I got a phone call because I signed up, and it was just, we have a town meeting on the telephone that night. So they called it like 6, and then we had the meeting was actually ongoing. So there's a lot of town meetings happening in different spaces, in person, virtually, on phones. So I suggest you contact your congressperson and sign up. I would say the same thing with your own state representative. They have their own newsletters as well. So go to their webs. Every state legislator has their own website as well. Sign up for their newsletters and just stay informed on what's happening in that particular district.
Thank you. I'm sure this is all news that everybody else.
No, these are great questions. These are perfect. Thank you, Liz, for putting the story sharing in there. So those are the two pieces that we are going to end with, unless there's anything else, any other questions, anything else that's happening that you want us, the community, to know, any events that are happening. Okay. Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Join the bill for, yay. Perfect. There you go. Sandria, this is the join the next town hall meeting. It's in the link. So if you click on that link,
night at the,
and I'll put it into the notes
We
now
actually
and
have,
save it.
it's going to be on Thursday. So if you register today, you should get the notification. I'm Elizabeth. I work for Congressman Bill Keating.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will definitely see you there. I'm excited that he's coming to Wareham.
Same.
Buddy, he's
Should be
coming
a
to
good
Wareham.
event.
Fun. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time, and we'll putting the notes and everything up on our website where we list all the meetings for the quarterly meetings. Thank you
all.
so much, and have a great day. Thank you.